Welcome to the Motivation Insiders podcast, where we explore best practices for designing, implementing, and measuring incentive, recognition, and loyalty programs. We look at motivation with an exclusive view, well, from the inside. This is an ongoing podcast designed and produced by the IESP, the Incentive Engagement Solutions Providers of the Incentive Marketing Association. I'm Lincoln Smith, board member of the IESP and CEO of Motiforce. Let's dive into today's episode. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Lincoln Smith, and I'm welcoming you to the Motivation Insiders, which is a production by the Incentive Marketing Association and the IESP. So today I'm fortunate enough to actually have our own team of individuals that are actually producing our first podcast internally here. So super excited about today and sharing with you some of the key observations and takeaways and trends that we all learned at the IMA Summit, which took place in Austin a couple of months ago. And we ultimately sat down as a group and went through and produced an ebook with some of the key trends that we're seeing out in the marketplace. But before I dive in and start to talk about some of those, I do want to point out that this wouldn't be possible without our great sponsor that has allowed us to produce this, not only a great ebook, but then this podcast today. And that is the thanks to RepLink, who is our sponsor. And I'd like to share that for more than 30 years, the Data Direct Group has delivered the RepLink system, the incentive industry's trusted product database, relied on by suppliers, reps, and incentive companies. The system enables suppliers and reps to manage products and create professional sales presentations through RepLink. It supports incentive companies with Access RepLink and a comprehensive sourcing solution for incentives and corporate gift programs, and powers the incentive platforms from a single point of integration through QuickShip, providing nightly pricing, availability, updates from over 100 suppliers and 2,500 brands, along with a seamless order placement, management, and fulfillment. Feel free to take a look at RepLink at replink.com, and they've been great partners for IMA and many of us that are listening today. So again, thanks to RepLink for sponsoring today's podcast and this white paper that you can access through the Incentive Marketing Association. So again, thanks again for their participation. And I'd love to introduce two of our esteemed guests here, and I'll let them introduce themselves. But Vince, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about yourself and let the listeners know who you are.
Yeah, hey everybody, and happy to be back on the Motivation Insiders podcast. So my name is Vince Chiofolo. I've been in and around the incentive engagement and recognition market and community for the past almost 11 years. And I'm serving the second term right now as board president of the Incentive and Engagement Solution Providers and serving on the board of the Incentive Marketing Association. So excited to be here, excited about the industry and all the changes and trends we're seeing, and looking forward to talking about it today.
Awesome. Thanks, Vince. Andrew, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, great to be talking to you guys today. Andrew Solomon from Achievement Awards Group in Cape Town, South Africa. I've been in the industry for about 10 years, and yes, I'm here to give a different perspective, a perspective from maybe a bit far away.
Yeah, no, that's great. And as I mentioned, I'm Lincoln Smith. I've been a long time in the industry for a long time, and also part of the IESP. I'm a past president, so I'm helping continue to be on that board, and I'm current CEO of Motiforce. But what's great here, Vince and Andrew, we get both your perspective, both from a domestic and global view and lens here today, which I think is appropriate in today's day and age. But let's go ahead and dive in. As I said, this is our first one together. But today's episode is really to recap an excellent white paper that we strongly encourage taking a look at and downloading from the Incentive Marketing Association. We all get together as industry professionals once a year at a global summit. This past year, it was in Austin. And Vince did a great job of pulling us all together and facilitating a breakout session where leaders in the solutions providers all came together, and we had a little workshop, and we were posed with different questions as professionals on what we're seeing out in the market. What are the trends? What are the challenges? What are the needs that the corporate buyers are really looking for and valuing as we start to take a look at 2026 and beyond? And it was just really a very productive and enlightening session for me, just to kind of either validate where and what I see with my clients and within my organization, but it also shed light on things that I hadn't been looking at or seeing or put a lot of emphasis on. So I hope that when you listen to today's podcast, there's a couple of nuggets that you can kind of take away and start to dig in a little bit deeper in on to help provide better value for your clients, or maybe adjust what your service offering is or how you might position it within your agency. So with that, we'll dive right in and cover not all of the topics, but just scratch the surface on a couple of them and give you a little bit of an appetizer. You can go in for the full meal into the report later on, or you can reach out to Vince and Andrew or myself or anyone within the IESP to dig in a little bit deeper. But anyhow, enough about me talking. I'm going to let now Vince and Andrew kind of share their perspectives. And, Vince, I'll start off with you. I think one of the key themes that we saw was that a lot of organizations promise results and they market and promote that, but we really understand that performance, improving it, is really the most important element that we're seeing out in the market from our clients and how they're evaluating. So anyhow, can you just kind of elaborate a little bit on that trend of performance over promises?
Yeah, and that's a really great one to start off on, because yes, it's a trend, and more than that, it's really fundamental to all of the other trends that I think we're seeing and that we're going to talk about today, is just seeing proof of program impact. And we're seeing demand for that more than we've seen even before in the past. So we use the term proof over promises in the ebook and in the session because it's really what we're hearing straight from buyers' mouths and incentives and engagement. So historically, rather than people being influenced based upon the idea of creating engagement or creating activities, running incentives for the possibility of creating an outcome, everybody now wants to see the outcome, be able to measure it, know what it looks like, understand the return on investment in the program, instead of just kind of assuming it's there by seeing activity data and things happening in the program. So the goal for everybody has really shifted from creating engagement to creating impact that's measurable by way of engagement. And it's an important distinction because it means, folks have to see results that are more than just things like program logins or activities or rewards sent, but see more things tied together of how that's affecting behaviors that are objectives to affect and how it's producing dollars against the spend of programs. So ROI is used a lot as a term, and put solution providers in a position where they've got to market and position themselves as the solution provider that can do more than activities and engagement, but can provide and show ROI so that those that are investing in these programs have confidence that it's a true investment that's going to yield returns and growth for their businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think along those lines, you also see that with that, having promises and being able to show results and predict those and actually, show that business value and impact, is that with that, when you start to design programs, Andrew and Vince, the idea and one of the other trends that came out of that was that not one size fits all. And it really has to do with understanding the goals and objectives and making sure that you're delivering a very specific program that's unique to that target audience and that client. So anyhow, can you just kind of elaborate a little bit on that trend of, one size fits none type of quote?
Yeah. And I think that's something that we've seen for quite a while, but now has just become a table stake expectation where a program has the configurability and the flexibility to be personalized to an incentive and program strategy. It doesn't mean every single aspect has to look different in every single program, but the way that it behaves, the incentive logic, the rules that you can put in there, do have to be unique because the nuances of your business are unique. So the incentives that you run theoretically can and should be different than everybody else's, even though, fundamentally from a user experience, they can look the same. There can be things that are similar. You don't have to go too outside of the box, but you should be able to tie your program strategy and your incentive rules to specific things that you're seeing in your specific organization. And you could only do that with flexibility and configurability and not running static promotions that are sell something, get something back, right? There's got to be the ability to flex and create rules in there. So when I think of one size fits all, to recap that, I think less of what you see and more of what you experience as a user and administrator, what you can do from a strategic standpoint that ties directly into the fundamentals of your business.
Yeah, I would just add to that. It really just puts a lot of pressure on the designer of the program, the designers of the program, to really connect with that organization's strategy, rather than trying to just build a program that's going to change behavior. We've got to build a program that's going to solve a strategic challenge.
That's right. I love that. One size fits none rather than the one size fits all mentality, and the tweaking it specifically for that business impact to those target audiences is definitely something that we heard in Austin as a collective group. The other one that I'd like to kind of have your guys' opinion on, which is a trend that we called micro gifting. The micro gifting producing macro impact. I love that kind of coined phrase. But I'll be honest with you, the micro gifting is a newer term for me and the industry, but I think it's really a great term. And I'd love, Andrew, for you to just kind of share a little bit of background on what that really means for the listeners, and then we can kind of talk about why it's so impactful. So anyhow, give us a quick definition on that, Andrew.
Sure. So micro gifting, as the name implies, is really just the smaller reward moments, and of course, the smaller they are, the more frequent they can be. So obviously, when you're setting your goal as to change behavior, then the more frequently you nudge that behavior, obviously the more successful you're going to be. So there's a big turnaround on the inclusivity of this, in that clearly with having more frequent and more smaller rewards, you're able to cover a lot more ground in terms of the participants of the program. So you kind of move a little away from the big program rewards, where at the end of a big cycle you have a few people that benefit from that, and in fact often that may be seen as, oh well, it's the usual suspects that are winning the trip or etc. But the micro gifting, the coffee cards, etc., and various digital interactions, because the platforms now enable these to be quite socialized, and in other words, communicated widely in either the teams or the entire company, that good feeling is felt far and wide and frequently. It's frequency is almost more important than the micro part of the gifting. It's that frequency that really kind of brings it home, and it puts the power into the hands of kind of managers and colleagues to be able to reward each other for the right behavior.
Yeah, I think there's also an element here of opening the aperture on what is a rewardable moment, right? So Andrew, I think you said it, right? It's shifting from outcomes of these big behaviors that are very noticeable, that get a big reward, but very infrequently, to shifting to more leading indicators that lead into outcomes like that and reinforce positive behaviors before the outcome happened. So being able to recognize those signals and then, nudge and nod them and reward people in order to keep them on that right track or get them on a better one is, it is the underlying purpose. It's not just about paying out more rewards just to reward people. It's about spotting more behaviors, being smarter about the business, seeing the signals, and being able to reinforce them better to take control over the result.
Definitely. And just to follow up on that, do you feel that the trend is the bigger awards? Andrew, you talked about like President's Clubs or a trip, and that long-term, goal that needs to be tracked over oftentimes maybe 12 to 18 months. Are you seeing a trend of those being reduced, or do you see micro gifting just being layered onto that? I didn't know if there was one being disruptive of the other, and just wanted your opinion on that, Andrew.
It's most certainly a layer, and the interesting thing, it's a great question because of the different generations that are in the workplace. There are different reward types that are more attractive to different generations, and you have those big trips that are more attractive to people at the later stage of their career, and then you have certainly the micro gifting and the frequency of rewarding and finding those moments to reward becoming very important, because of we need to keep things moving. We need to keep the motivation alive. So, but I think there certainly are. It's evident of the generations in the workplace that there are people that are going, I'm working hard now, and I'm going to get my reward way later. But it just is different for different groups.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I hear you, and I tend to agree. It's not one or the other. I think it's layered on understanding. And I think that's another leading to one of our next trends that I'd love for Vince, maybe you to kind of talk about, is the idea of hyper-targeting. So Andrew kind of started to allude to that with either generational or, life stage or whatever the case might be. But, can you just talk about that trend of hyper-targeting and making sure that there's a high degree of personalization, and where are we going with that in the incentive space?
Yeah, it really does go hand in hand with the previous topic, because if you're going to micro gift, it's usually got to be personal. It doesn't mean sending the whole organization or channel the same reward for one thing, right? It means understanding the individual behaviors and signals that are happening, and then sending that micro gift. And to do that, you really have to create more micro audiences to do more micro gifting. So that means more personalization in the messaging, what the reward is for, how it's delivered, maybe what the reward type is relative to the person and their past behaviors. But all of that, is the difference between targeting and hyper targeting. Segmentation a few years ago was all the rage. It was just, hey, instead of sending everybody, in a whole organization, maybe in a recognition program, a birthday or an anniversary gift, segment and send rewards or recognition for specific behaviors. The hyper now goes into actual behaviors and micro leading indicators that are happening in the program, where you can say not just, hey, here, this person is in this division, right? So here's a relevant strategy for them. It might be more, this person behaved in a certain way, that you can now target and create more hyper strategic execution of rewards, engagement, recognition towards those people. So now hyper targeting is all the rage. And again, I don't think you can really do micro gifting without the micro audiences and making it personal. So it all really comes together in a nice package.
Yeah, I think I'd just like to add what's amazing for practitioners out there is that we're living in an age where the technology has enabled this incredibly well. So it really is about making sure you have your hands on the right data and the right tools to make these things happen. But the good news is all of this tech is out there.
Well, it wouldn't be a podcast if you didn't use the word AI. So, with that, Andrew and Vince, I assume, which is a pretty good assumption here, is that AI is allowing for that personalization, that micro gifting, and for service providers to do that at scale now. But any other comments on what that technology is allowing us to do as it pertains to micro gifting and personalization? Just a couple of comments on that.
I think that AI has certainly, and it's just another one, is enabling text. It's enabled us to communicate to wider groups of people in a personalized way. So a big group of participants, that would have been a huge challenge not 5 years ago. It's way easier now. I'm not saying it's easy, it's easier. And you still have a lot of design consideration in that. But it's enabling tech. So absolutely, Lincoln, it's making it more possible than ever before.
Totally. And the other piece I wanted to highlight that you mentioned, Vince, is we were talking about micro. It's not only micro at the personalization level, but then the micro business events and behaviors. So it's both not only the complexities of the profile as an individual or persona of who we're targeting becomes more granular, but then the business elements and activities of which you might integrate into a program is equally being more strategic. So
that's
again,
right.
It's kind of got an X and Y axis on that term.
Yeah, and then AI plays into all of that, right? So the more data you have, the more of a use case you have for AI to be able to synthesize the data and then use it. And so, I think there's a lot of ways to think about how AI is applying towards incentives and engagement programs. Holistically, I think we're starting to see and hear about too. It's AI that supports the participant experience, which is kind of as simple as, maybe a chat bot that helps the user understand how to use the program or incentive rules. But now what we're starting to at least hear about is the more complex side of AI that supports the administrator experience, right? So shaping program design and strategy and the ongoing optimization of a program. So it's interesting to think about this open feedback loop type of a system that we have today of, data coming into a program, incentives being paid out, then results. Turning into more of an ecosystem where we have data coming in, the possibility of that data being interpreted by AI to help us dictate a better incentive strategy, then that spewing results that then also gets interpreted by AI to understand, did it work well, what didn't work, interpreting that and then bringing it back to the beginning of the loop of data in to determine what the next incentive strategy is. And then optimization makes that loop tighter and tighter over time. So AI assisted open feedback loop in these incentive systems is, I think, what's next on the horizon, and really exciting to be able to do what we started with and create better noticeable return and impact from these programs.
Yeah, that's great. I'd love to do another podcast and dive deeper on that, to be honest with you, because I do think it's exciting and it's cutting edge. And, Vince and Andrew, you guys have both experience and your organizations are on the front end of that. But the whole IESP is experimenting. And I think that would be a great podcast for the future, Vince, with it. So anyhow, let's keep moving on as far as the white paper and some of the key trends that we have out there. There's always talk about what's next for rewards. So we talked a little bit about the micro gifting and personalization and how we're engaging and designing programs to a certain degree. But what do we see on the rewards side? RepLink is our sponsor for today. They're all about aggregating and providing the right rewards through us as service providers and making sure that they're appropriate for the participants. But what are some of the trends that our clients are asking for that we are kind of on the front end here of on that? Do one of you guys want to mind just sharing what are some of the emerging futuristic types of rewards that might be finding themselves in a program in the future?
And I could start, Andrew. Yeah, I would love to hear your comments on top of mine. But outside of the rewards themselves, I think fundamentally what we're hearing a lot is how rewards behave, right? So desire to see rewarding in a more touchless and seamless manner, where it's just easier for both the user, the administrator, and the platforms themselves to distribute rewards. And so I think that's a real innovation path for the industry that could also bleed into blockchain and Web3 and all kinds of things to make things just more easy and more flexible for the user. And in terms of reward types itself, all the classics, right? Merchandise and travel and gift cards and open loop are still really popular. I think what we see in the studies every year is tiny shifts, right? And how those behave and what's leading. And what's interesting to see, if this is in the ebook, is just the rise of cryptocurrencies and more alternative things that we haven't seen before are still on the fringe, still very low, but the highest as far as growth year over year, right? It's almost the micro caps of rewards, right? Last year there were maybe 2% of folks are thinking about it, and now it's 10%. So it's still very small, but that's a huge difference in what's on people's minds as far as those as trends.
Yeah, I completely agree with all of that. I just wanted to add in there that just interestingly in the rewards, and when you speak of the trend on a trend basis, it's difficult to ignore new generations. Yet again, it's just one of those things. But in terms of trending rewards, you've also got a lot of younger generations really just looking for time off. So it's not it's not a big technology leap or anything like that. It's just a change in the trend based on a different generation. So I just want to add that into everything that Vince said.
Yeah, totally. And again, there's other topics that we could dive into at a later time. But the Web3 and crypto continue to be talked about, and we're going to see how much of a reality those become as time moves on. But they're definitely topical that are out in the marketplace, and we're keeping our thumb on. The last thing I'll mention is that curation is really important, I think, where in the past, more was better. Sometimes less is better. When I say less, it just needs to be more strategic and curated based off of the personalization. So, more is not better in the sense of rewards all the time. So we see that trend as well. A lot of these things start to feed into a general theme is what we saw and we chatted a lot about. And what I mean by that is that there's always been a little bit of a separation from a mindset on what expectations are in a B2B loyalty and incentive and engagement program, opposed to what we're used to in the B2C in the consumer loyalty space. And there's always been kind of this acceptance that they're quite unique and different, and they have different criteria and different expectations. But, with that, what are we seeing out there as far as B2C and B2B? Do you mind kind of sharing what your perspective and what we were starting to hear and talk about?
So yeah, these two worlds of B2C and B2B have certainly collided. That's what we're seeing. And certainly it makes sense that the rules and the strategies behind the design, they're different. They're trying to achieve different things. But the users of these programs are essentially just people. The B2C programs have essentially trained us to have an expectation about how companies are engaging with us. So as a participant in a B2B program, well, our expectations have all changed. So the interfaces, the way that we're interacting, whether we're doing it on our devices, and expecting personalization. It's no longer acceptable to just be called dear participant. At the very least, they better be calling you by your name, exactly as we would expect from a B2C program. So there's a lot of learning and expectation that's changed over time. And that's all for the good. It just makes these programs better. It makes them more engaging. You're more entrenched in the workings of the program, and you want to proceed to those targets, to those milestones, ultimately changing behavior. So I think all of the lessons learned and the crashing together of these two universes has been an amazing thing. And I think it will continue with all of this technology enablement, and as more business programs kind of adopt this learning, I think they're just going to get better.
Agreed.
It's also not surprising, right? It's hard to expect someone that's used to participating in a Delta SkyMiles program or a Sephora Beauty Insider program that is ahead of the curve and highly engaging, and then that's meant to reinforce their loyalty and reward their loyalty, and then come to a B2B program that's also designed to reward loyalty but be so far behind the curve and not have the same type of experience. So that's one part of the expectation. And then it's also just social media and other applications from a consumer perspective outside of loyalty altogether that set a certain expectation of how UI UX should be in any program that is also highly influential to the UI UX strategy for incentive recognition programs.
Definitely. Yeah. So there's a lot of agreement that the B2C expectations have now bled into the B2B in a really profound way. So making sure that you're integrating those types of capabilities and engagement tactics, is certainly a trend. With that, we have a couple of other key topics. Again, we can kind of dive deep and spend a whole hour on this, but one of the key things with just about everything in all business is the data insights and the metrics that are really important. And it starts with what you had mentioned on the front end, Vince, of performance over promises. And the only way that we can get to performance is really understanding the metrics and what the goals and objectives are. But can you just share with us on kind of what those expectations are and how service providers are looking at this today?
Yeah, I think expectations there are shifting to become a little bit more complex and advanced, right? So, metrics as per the definition even a couple of years ago is, show me login activities, show me how much people are engaging in the program, and then that's satisfying because I'm going to assume that if there is login activity and there's participation in promotions, that it's tying back to some outcomes that are positive for the business. The new trend is, well, are they? Are they tying to outcomes that are positive for the business, and what are the outcomes and how much and what are we investing relative to what we're getting from those outcomes? So tying more data into the program is more than just the isolated program activity, and relating that program activity to the actual outcomes is really important and something that I think we're going to see more of. And it calls for just more data and more integrated, reward ecosystems outside of just the reward platform itself. And how that's done, I think there's a lot of different ways, but that's it. It's just like we said to start the podcast, the proof over promises. People have seen the promises, right? Some of the indicators that show program activity. Now they want to see the proof in the same environment. And, I think a lot of solution providers are starting to move towards that in a great way.
Yeah, I'm not even going to add anything to that. That was perfectly summed up.
That's great. Yeah, I totally agree. And then the other trend that I see on that, Vince and Andrew, is instead of lagging, as you were talking about, Vince, those are vanity matrix, is really now shifting to predictive. And so, are we actually being able to take a look at program engagement and overlay other data systems to actually create what forecast and be more predictive rather than lagging indicators? So working with the supplier and understanding those elements are really critical. But really, it's becoming much more advanced, and the market is demanding that today. So this brings us to just touching a few of these, Vince and Andrew, for the listeners right now. If you wouldn't mind just giving us a quick final thought on your thoughts after all of us getting together at the summit and taking a look at all of these trends that are kind of going on. What would be kind of a key message that the listener should have taken away from this? But Andrew, I'll start with you, and then Vince, maybe you can kind of give us your final thought. So Andrew?
Well, yeah, thanks, Lincoln. I think the key thing that's happening at the moment is that there's so much new tech out there that's enabling so many different things, and of course, all of these strategies, kind of are evolving, whether it be because of generations, etc. And perhaps some of our kind of listeners would be grappling with exactly how they're applying those things. But I think there's certain fundamentals, and Vince mentioned earlier, in fact, a couple of times, connecting back to the data that you're gathering, making sure that you connect to that. It's one of those kind of, it's at the atomic level. You got to have that in order to do a lot of the other things that we've been speaking about. And I think, there's, as people grapple and figure out how they're going to evolve and design programs, you're either, working with companies that embrace tech, or you're going to need to start embracing tech. And certainly the first part of that is embracing the data and evolving that so that you can do a lot of what we've been speaking about. It's easy to speak about it, but doing it requires quite a lot of preparation and foresight.
Totally. Yep. Great takeaway and trend. So, Vince, what will be the final takeaway that you'd like the listener to have from this?
Yeah, and I think we're probably saying it in a lot of different ways, and I'll offer another. It's impact over activity in incentives. So an activity-driven history is shifting to more of an impact-driven future, and that starts at the beginning, right? It's really tying the program strategy and what you're looking to do to the overall business objectives, right? That's the root. Then ensuring that there's constant feedback being fed into the system to ensure that the incentives or the recognition strategies that you're executing are working. And if they are, great, how do you do more? And if they're not, then how do you change that and have that loop back in and get smarter and smarter. And then importantly, like we're saying, have it show the impact to know that it's working. What is it impacting specifically? And is it tying back to that root of what you're looking to do with the business objectives? And that's what makes these programs less of a luxury and more of an ancillary business tool that people really rely on to ensure that they have control over results and performance in their channel, with their workforce, with their consumers, or however they leverage incentive and engagement.
Agreed. Yeah, great final thoughts from each of you. I think the idea that as our industry has evolved and continues to be at the front end here is that we are an industry that helps deliver business results and business impact. And so, really making sure that you have the right partner and the right design approach to delivering on that is critical. So I hope that today some of these trends were in little nuggets. Like I said, you can certainly dive deeper with looking at that report that's posted at the Incentive Marketing Association and the IESP website. Please download that, and then feel free to reach out to anyone in the IESP. Happy to help any one of you kind of chat more about any of these trends. One other little plug, please listen to the Motivation Insiders, subscribe to that. And then finally, we also had an engine that the IESP has developed called Engage IQ. It's a great tool that's available for anyone to go in, ask it questions, and ultimately provide advice on program design and best practices and different types of research. So it's a great tool that you could also interact with. But with that, thank you so much, Vince. Thank you, Andrew. And we'll look forward to seeing you on future Motivation Insiders.
Thanks, Lincoln.
Thank you.